Okay guys, in case you haven't met me yet, I'm Dagger and I'm in charge of reviewing 101 Dalmatian Street episodes from now on. Don't worry, Tricky Fox isn't going anywhere and he will keep reviewing everything else. But since I'm in charge of talking about the dog show now, we need a slight rebrand. Can't keep calling these Fox Review when I'm not a fox after all. So if you have any suggestions how I should call my Dalmatian Street reviews, let me know in the comments below. And with that being said, let's dive in. A Date with Destiny, Dallas and Deja Vu. Well, that episode turned out much different than I expected, cause we got an introduction to the main antagonist of the series, Hunter Devil. Okay, the fact that he's a devil hasn't really been revealed in the show itself yet, but yeah, at this point it's kinda common knowledge, and even if you didn't know, it's rather easy to guess that he is somehow connected to Cruella, so don't complain to me about spoilers, okay? Now, if you paid attention, you probably noticed that this kid popped up a lot in the background of past episodes. Nothing really major, he was mostly just there, but two of his cameos stood out from the rest. The first being in the Woof Factor, in which he already tried to get close to Triple D, only to get stopped by security. The second one being at the end of the Nose Job two-parter, where we didn't get to see his face, but we get to see quite a bit of his pet cat, and this episode confirmed that it was indeed his cat. We also learned in that episode that he is looking for Dalmatians for whatever reason. It was rather ominous and he was made out to be mysterious. Here, not so much.
Hey, cutie wooties! Wanted to introduce you to your biggest fanboy, Hunter! He won a day on set with you.
OMG! Is it really them? I mean, is it really you? Can I pet one?
Nobody touches the fur!
Hey! I totes respect your space. Just happy to be hanging with you.
Frankly, he's a bit more flamboyant than I expected him to be, which is not a negative, mind you. I think he's actually a lot of fun. For the most part, he's played completely for laughs and as a victim of slapstick. He's maybe worse than Dylan in that regard, which says a lot. In particular, the whole running gag with him being stuck in this giant pile of jello is pretty funny, but maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. The episode itself opens with a TV stop Triple D produced that went viral. And hey, I can see why. Seeing those three beating up some wrestlers certainly is hilarious. Dylan, however, disagrees and freaks out how they could put themselves into so much danger, even though we already spent an episode in which Dylan, Dolly and Deepak fit in for Triple D for a TV spot and learned what kind of work goes into that, and that Triple D can handle himself pretty well. Yeah, I get it, Dylan is a bit of a control and safety freak, but it does appear that they dialed up these character traits for this episode.
You'd have everyone wrapped up in bubble wrap if you could.
I would not.
Hey Dylan, just finished your puppy bubble wrapper. Let's do a test run.
Okay, not gonna lie, I would like to have that bubble wrap gun. Also, more hilarious slapstick. Yeah, I think we got a bit more of that than usual here. Now Dylan wants to keep an eye on Triple D, but the manager thinks that he's rabid and therefore throws him out whenever he gets too close to Triple D, which results in even more shenanigans. This is basically what he does throughout the entire episode until the climax. Now in the beginning of the episode they established that there was a contest which allows the winner to spend one day with Triple D, and as it turns out the winner is Hunter. Now, it is never really stated, but Hunter does mention that he made sure to win the competition, so it's more than likely that he somehow rigged it to be the winner. The reason being that he tries to get a DNA sample of at least one of the three triplets. Now, of course, the question is, why would he be interested in that? The obvious assumption is that he tries to find the descendants of the Dalmatians that screwed over Cruella back in the day. Well, and we do know that Delilah is a direct descendant of Pongo and Perdita. Still seems a bit weird when you consider that this only applies to so many of her children, as some of them are from Doug's previous marriage, and it is probably safe to assume that some of them were adopted, similar to the original 101 Dalmatians, which weren't all Pongos and Perdita's biological children either. So admittedly, while I do think it is an interesting idea to connect this show more to the original movie, it does seem a bit convoluted and unnecessary. Cruella in the original movie didn't care whether Dalmatians came from. She just needed a whole bunch of them. Sure, it probably has to do with petty revenge, but frankly I think just having Hunter being interested in Dalmatians would have worked well enough. Speaking of Cruella though, I wonder if she makes an appearance in the show. She would be rather old, but technically she could still be alive. This appears at least somewhat plausible, as Hunter promises someone to get their DNA sample, indicating that he's acting on someone else's orders. I don't know if it is Cruella or someone else, but it is at least a likely assumption. Now Hunter tries to get the DNA sample and fails, resulting with him ending up in that giant jello over and over again. After a couple of failed attempts, Hunter shows a bit of his scheming side, suggesting that they should shoot a spot of Triple D skydiving out of his helicopter. I am not sure how this is supposed to go viral, considering that they already did a skydiving commercial in their Woof Factor episode, with the only difference being that they used a green screen in that episode while Hunter wants him to do actual skydiving here. And it seems incredibly questionable that the manager agrees to that idea. Like, do you want to murder your viral YouTube puppies? Are you stupid? Also, they reused the same animation of that previously mentioned pizza commercial from the Woof Factor, only in different outfits. Besides that, really, that's your big plan. Jumping out of a helicopter and try to get the DNA sample while falling? Well, okay, I shouldn't be too harsh here. It makes for a fun and exciting scenario. And the fact that there is no one between him and the puppies during the skydive makes at least some sense, I guess. Now this is the point where Triple D admit that Dylan might have had a point about safety, which is a bit of a contrived setup to prove him right if you ask me, but okay. And as it turns out, those safety concerns were all justified as Dallas' parachute malfunctions. Luckily for her, Dylan snuck into Hunter's backpack and apparently removed his parachute in the process, and Dylan manages to save his sister and himself with the puppy bubble wrapper, which results in a hilarious scene in which Dylan bounces around the entire town. Hunter, however, doesn't have that much luck and crashes through the ceiling into that jello again. Yeah, at this point I'm convinced that Cruella married a Looney Tune character, cause that's the only way to explain how he could have survived this. Okay, this show is a cartoon and has been rather loose with the laws of physics so far, but this episode seems to take it to a new extreme. But what bothers me the most about this is that if the whole thing was slightly more realistic, Dylan would have been responsible for Hunter's death, and that doesn't sit well with me. Frankly, I would have preferred if Dylan had used a bubble wrapper on Hunter as well, and the whole pinball thing could have happened to him instead of Dylan. After that, the triplets tell everyone of Dylan's heroism, for some reason not mentioning that he almost committed manslaughter, and now I wonder where the Dylan from Dalmatians is, who would have certainly pointed out that the physics in this episode were highly questionable. This episode then ends with one final scene of Hunter analyzing the DNA sample which he did manage to acquire during the fall against all odds, and it's a match. Again, at this point we can only assume what he tried to find out, but I think it is fairly obvious that he tries to find a connection between the Dalmatians in this show and the ones in the original movie. And with that being said, let's wrap things up. A Date with Destiny, Dallas and Deja Vu was a pretty good episode, but most importantly, I didn't see it coming, like, at all. I went on record saying that you don't really watch the show for a story arc, and while I still stand by the statement, there was a surprising amount of build-up in this episode. This was a formal introduction to Hunter. We got to know him, and he's a fun character. Exactly how I like my recurring villains. Now we know that he can be funny, the question remains if he can also be a serious threat. So far he mostly has been played for laughs, but I wonder how well he works when we are supposed to take him seriously. In any case, I can't wait to see more of him, as he was very funny, like this episode in general, though it felt a bit more, for lack of a better term, cartoony than usual. Much more slapstick and disregard for physics. It's not like other episodes are realistic, but usually not to the same degree. It is a little bit jarring when you have Dylan calling people out on similar physics-defying stunts in one episode, when he ends up pinballing through all of London and apparently even into space. I mean, it was fun, but there's a point to be made that this episode was too wacky for the standard set by the show. But what about you? Did you like this episode? Anything that bothered you? What were your thoughts on Hunter? Let me know in the comments below. I am Dagger, and I really have to work on a catchphrase.
Sly as a fox, you got me under your spell. But you know I'll never tell that I know you know so well. Sometimes you can be too smart for you're